Hi everyone and welcome to StudioJake. I of course am your host Jacob Airy. Now I want to talk to you about something today, something that's pretty close to my heart, something that has to do with comic books and other comic book media such as films and TV shows. Before we begin, I just want to apologize because you might hear some noise in the background. There's construction going on next door to me, so if my mic picks it up, I apologize, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. So from the thumbnail, you probably gathered that I want to talk about realism. So I'm going to define realism. Don't worry, I don't want to give like some arbitrary meaning toward it. So forgive me for looking down. I don't have any of the fancy stuff a lot of other YouTubers have, so I have to read directly from my phone. So realism, noun. So this is Platonic realism. The attitude or practice of accepting a situation as it is, and being prepared to deal with it accordingly. So, that's looking things from a realistic approach. Now, there's another side to realism, and that's realism in the arts, as an artisan, as a creator. And I would say that it goes from this: the quality or act of representing a person, thing, or situation accurately or in a way that is true to life. Now, I find this very interesting because a little bit of realism is good. I mean, if you look at the world of the Transformers, right? So you've got Cybertron, and you've got the leader of the Autobots named Optimus Prime, and he's got the Autobot Matrix of Leadership, which makes him the leader of the Autobots, and he's battling the evil Decepticons led by Megatron, and everything in between. Now, they have a lot of the story of the Transformers, especially in Generation 1 and in Transformers Car Robots and in Beast Wars. They take place on planet Earth, right? They have a little bit of something that's realistic, despite it being a sort of science fiction fantasy. We also see this with Star Wars, right? We have human characters, even though it takes place in a galaxy far, far away. We see this with Star Trek. So you've got, the Enterprise, which is a very common name for a flagship of various fleets. You've got humanity going out and evolving past sort of their prejudice into a golden age. And of course, now modern Trek is trying to ruin all that, but that's neither here nor there. But I think that, one of the things I rail against commonly is wokeism. I think wokeism is a plague, but I don't think that's the only thing that is hurting sort of the superhero franchise. And it's this idea of everything has to be realistic. Everything has to be real. There's no sense of whimsy or fun or fantasy or suspending your belief. And actually, and I've read this quote before, I believe I did when I talked about, can Batman be based on Batman? When I did that video. And it's from David Mazzucchelli, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right because he's a fantastic artist. He's worked on Daredevil, but one of my favorite stories, which is Batman Year One, which was written by Frank Miller, and Mazzucchelli did the artwork for it. Mazzucchelli, I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But in the afterwards, in Batman Year One, he said this: while an interesting experiment, it's probably not a good idea to shoehorn too much reality into the fantasy realm of the superhero. With Year One, Frank Miller and I sought to craft a credible Batman grounded in a world we recognize. But did we go too far? Once a depiction veers toward realism, each new detail releases a torrent of questions that exposes the absurdity at the heart of the genre. The more realistic heroes become, the less believable they are. And I 100% agree with him. I believe that if you take sort of the superhero genre and you insert this sort of realistic kind of nihilism into them, I think that it makes them lose their specialness. So there's a ton of examples of this. We've got Zack Snyder. Remember when he threw that hissy fit when someone complained about, he was at a Comic-Con, I think, and someone complained about him having Batman kill, and he threw that hissy fit. Do you still think your superheroes are innocent? They don't lie to the government. Don't question my genius. Remember that? So Okay, I exaggerated a little bit, but you get the idea. He wanted, and even before he directed Man of Steel, he did this really insane interview where he complained about how Nolan did the Dark Knight trilogy. He's like, it wasn't dark enough. I would see Batman get or have happened horrible things to him while he was in prison. That's what dark is. Yeah, Zack Snyder doesn't know what dark is. He just knows what angst is. Anyway, that sort of infusion of realism into this genre, and you know, this almost happened to Sonic the Hedgehog, right? So everyone remembers that horrible trailer that Paramount first premiered when they did the original design for Sonic the Hedgehog, where his eyeballs were like way off to the side and everything, and everyone was freaked out by it, and so they redesigned him to make him look more like his video game counterpart. And that was all an attempt to make him look like a real hedgehog. And we saw this with the Ninja Turtles. So the Ninja Turtles that starred Megan Fox, I believe it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. Both of those movies were originally supposed to be, they didn't have the original origin for the Turtles. They were going to have an alien origin to them. So instead of a TCRI spilling ooze into the sewers and infecting these pet turtles who get and their master Splinter, and they get turned into kind of more humanoid, and they develop ninja skills and everything. Before all that, the original plan, which I believe the code name for the story was the Green Door or something ridiculous like that, they were going to have them have an alien sort of background where they were like baby aliens or something like that. And again, the fans revolted and they fixed the story. And it was an attempt to make the turtles more real, more relatable, because the idea was, if they're in my opinion, this is just me speculating, by the way. No one has said this. This is just me speculating. I think the idea behind that was they would be more relatable if they started out not as animals, but as some sort of humanoid alien. They would be more relatable because they would at least have some sort of thing that resembled humanity. But I think it instead took their specialness away from them. What made the Turtles special was the fact that they came from nothing, and then they became something. They became the Turtles in a half shell, the defenders of New York City, the eaters of pizza, all the things that the Turtles are. And, and I kind of was talking about this with sort of, the Snyderverse, the original outline for the DCEU. They wanted to make those characters seem more realistic, but in the process, Superman kind of lost his specialness, right? So now he goes from this heroic Boy Scout with truth, justice, and the American way, to a guy who's perfectly willing to rip the head off, break the neck off the bad guy, and then scream about it, of course, and then cry about his mommy with Batman, right? So you've got Martha, you've got all these ideas that I have to make these superheroes feel realistic. But in my humble opinion, I don't think as they become more realistic, they become less special. They lose that sort of fantasy side to them where they can be someone that you can look up to. And we see this, right? So, when people were saying, there's this big push, especially with the access media, like Kotaku or IGN or Screen Rant or Slash Film, where they're like, oh, we have to have the first ever insert identity politics identifier in here, or we can't connect. Absolutely preposterous. The idea is you're supposed to be able to connect they're supposed to connect with everyone despite who they are. So anyone could be Batman. He's just a regular guy. Sure, if you have to have the right amount of money, you have to have the right amount of training, but anyone could be Batman. With Wonder Woman, everyone, not just women, but women especially, can look up to Wonder Woman. She can be inspiring. Same with the character of Vixen. from the Justice League. She's this really powerful, cool Justice Leaguer who has this amazing ability to connect with the animal world. It's something that you can connect with, something that you can identify with, because who doesn't love animals, right? You love to either have them as pets or you love to eat them, right? And one of the things that makes them special is no matter who they are or what they look like, that you can connect with them on a human level. And as they get more realistic, that starts to remove that specialness from them, that little bit of whimsy, that little bit of fantasy. Now, a character like Batman, obviously you're not going to find a lot of whimsy, but you're going to find a lot of adventuring. You're going to find a lot of a lot of detective work in Batman, a lot of creativity. You can connect with him on that level. A character like Spider-Man, who's the Everman. And, I know a lot of people didn't like the first two Tom Holland films because they kind of made him sort of Iron Man's ward, and that kind of took away the sort of poor person Peter Parker, right? And because he gave him sort of an edge. And No Way Home I liked because they kind of brought back. I still liked it because even though Peter did get everything from Tony Stark, they still, in my opinion, Tom Holland did a good job of portraying him as the everyman. He's someone you can connect to, someone who's relatable. That's another reason why I like Static Shock growing up. I liked the show Static Shock. I'll be honest, I was not really a Milestone Comics reader, but I did like the show. I thought it was really well done, and you could connect with Virgil on certain ways. Now, obviously, I couldn't connect with Virgil on every level, but that's not what it's about. It's about connecting with him on that human level so that I can learn from him and grow. Heroes should be aspirational. I've talked about this with the Green Knight. The Green Knight took a story about how resisting your animalistic urges, your sort of dark side, about how that makes you a strong knight. So, with the story of Sir Gawain in the Green Knight, anytime he ran into a test that tempted him, he resisted temptation, except once, and one time in the story he falls, but he gets right back up, and he keeps going, and he keeps resisting temptation until he comes face to face in the finale with the Green Knight. And with the film, that came out recently, it was the opposite message. It was that him falling is what made him special. It's his caving, his giving into temptation. That's what made him a knight. And no, it's not. That story is very flawed. Heroes should be aspirational. They should be someone that you look up to. Now, obviously, and again, someone like, say, the Punisher. You're like, Jacob, what about the Punisher? With Punisher, it's more about watching his progression, right? Because Marvel Comics, a lot of people don't realize this. Everyone thinks that he's just like how he is in the Thomas Jane films or in the Netflix version of the Punisher. But if you actually read the comics, like me, you would see that he started out as a Spider-Man villain. He's this violent anti-hero who goes against everything that Spider-Man stands for, and he evolves. So he kind of starts off going on this vengeance drive. He's going to get revenge on the people who killed his family, and then it turns in he's going to punish the people who killed his family, and then other people who are like the people, and then soon he kind of, there's at one point in the comics he actually becomes obsessed with killing just killing bad guys. And I actually think at one point he even starts going after jaywalkers, which is when sort of the Defenders sort of step in, so to take, or excuse me, not the Defenders, the Marvel Knights kind of have to step in to stop him. I really feel so with him, but you connect with him on the human level as far as grief and missing your family and tragedy and despair and whatnot. And that's another way you can connect with Batman or Barbara Gordon, Batgirl. So when I know it sounds kind of like I'm rambling. All I'm trying to say is the more realistic the characters in these sort of fantasy world, these science fiction worlds, the more you insert real world issues and problems on them, the less special they are, because in the end, so what? They're just another Joe Blow down the street. They didn't accomplish anything worthy of note. They didn't succeed when they could have fallen. They are failures. We see this a lot with all these bait and switches that we're seeing in a lot of the new phase of Marvel. Right, we're seeing a ton of bait and switches, or like we saw with He-Man or excuse me, Masters of the Universe Revelation. We're seeing all this, or the bait and switch they did with the Legend of Korra, where all of this stuff is putting real world issues with these characters, and really we need them to be fantasy. We need them to have that sort of imagination, that sort of creativity that sets them apart, that sort of aspirational being, and which I honestly think that's why anime is winning. Is when you look, you can see I have Kurama from Naruto in the background. What makes Naruto special? It's the fact that he's this kid who is, despite being the son of the leader of his village, and his father died, and mother too, by the way, saving the rest of the village. He's rejected, and he's cast out. And his famous line is, "I'm not a germ, I am Naruto." And he likes ramen, and he wants to be a great ninja, and he wants to be the village leader, what they call the Hokage. He wants to be all those things. And we don't watch Naruto because we want Naruto to fail. That's why you watch Boruto. You watch Naruto because you want to... that was a joke. You watch Naruto because you want him to succeed. You're with him when he triumphs. When you see him confront Pain, who's a villain in the show. That's actually the name of a villain, is Pain. Unless you watch the French dub, and then his name is just Ouch. But anyway, when you see him stand off against Pain, Pain is at first like, "Oh, you're just another ninja. Why don't you join me? Your village doesn't even like you." And Naruto's like, "But I won't give up." And his courage and his resolve actually changes Pain. And it makes Pain realize the error of his ways. And so he rejects being evil. And it makes you want to cheer for Naruto and see the rest of his victories. Sure, Naruto has a lot of pitfalls along the way. There's a lot of filler episodes in Naruto, but that's one thing that you love about it, is it doesn't lose its sense of whimsy. It doesn't lose its sense of adventure. It doesn't lose its sense of fantasy. And I really feel for the West, we're losing that sort of ideal because we want our heroes to be so realistic. But then, as Mazzucchelli point out, the more realistic you make them, the more absurd they seem, and the less heroic they become. So that's all I want to say on the matter. And like I said, I apologize if this sounded really rambling, but it was just something I wanted to get off my chest. Because I see this all the time, especially with Star Trek and with Star Wars and now with Transformers, how IDW just totally ruined the Transformers and so on and so forth. It's happening all across the board. Doctor Who, He-Man, which I don't even watch those two franchises, but I'm connected to people who are part of those fandoms, and they're feeling the same thing. So I just wanted to get it off that chest. Hope you like what you saw, and I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit the like button, leave me a comment below, share this video out, and I would really appreciate it if you chose today to become a subscriber to StudioJake. Thank you so much for watching. You can follow me on all my socials that are in the description of this video, and I'll see you next time right here on StudioJake.